Good morning, everyone. This is Daniel Broniatowski from the Maestro Musicians Academy. We are here with our green screen, which doesn't have a virtual background today, but so be it. We're realizing more and more here that technical problems do sometimes cause things to be a little bit different than we expected. Anyway, so we are Maestro Musicians, and you can find out about us at maestromusicianslexington.com. Our music lessons serve the greater Boston area, but now we're also serving the world via the World Wide Web, and people find us here on our Facebook Live page. That's the Maestro Musicians page, Maestro Musicians Lexington, I should say. And they also find us on our YouTube channel, Maestro Musicians. So today's subject is about repertoire. What is it that children are going to learn in their first lesson? And this is a pretty simple topic at the beginning, but it becomes more complex as students get more complex in their needs, particularly as they are progressing. So we're going to start with the simple, and we will then go on to the complex. So at the beginning, what happens is, usually particularly for piano students, kids will start out with various method books. Some of the most popular method books are Faber Piano Adventures. There are also books by James Bastian, which is from generations past. There's also the Alfred Piano series. I personally grew up on the John Thompson's Easiest Piano course, which is a bit outdated today, but I do have fond memories of the little drawings in there and the short pieces. And there's also the Diller Quayle series. So you can't go wrong with any of those. At the end of the day, the method books do teach very similar techniques, but the most important aspect of what it is that teachers learn, or students learn, I'm jumping ahead of myself, is actually how the teacher instructs and what the teacher teaches. Because a method book itself will get a student to a certain point if he or she is doing it on his or her own. But of course, we're dealing with kids here. So, the motivation is not necessarily going to be there. And, music is about having fun and sharing with other people. At the end of the day, we want to be able to make music with other people. And there's that interactive approach that is so important in the experience. Particularly when we're dealing with kids, we want kids to be able to take what it is that they're learning and be inspired. So let's talk about what it is that they do learn at the beginning, because we've talked about the fact that there exist different method books, but we need to talk about what is in those books. The very beginning experience of a child learning music is so crucial to whether or not he or she will continue. We often get concerned parents who call us who say, I'm a little bit nervous because my son or daughter is just starting, and I don't want him or her to have the experience I had growing up, which was that my teacher was really mean and strict, and I felt scared of my instructor. And that is a very old school approach. It does exist in some places, but not here at the Maestro Musicians Academy. We do believe in high standards, but we also believe that high standards are able to be achieved without the crack the whip kind of mentality. Yes, it is true that kids, particularly as they get older in the middle school times and high school times, need to have more pressure on them as they do in any other subject, because otherwise they won't be able to keep up. The music does get harder, but that would be for any subject. And when we're dealing with kids, particularly, let's say a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, you don't want to pressure them. What we're trying to do is establish a love for music. We're trying to establish an inspirational approach where the kids really feel that they want to come back every week. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, when we're teaching, aside from the fact that we want to develop that close relationship between the kids and the instructors, we also know that the music that they play has to be something that they find inspiring, and it has to be something that they feel that they can do. So many of these method books, they do spoon feed in a good way, in the sense that the little songs that they're learning at the beginning all have a purpose, particularly from the standpoint of learning fundamentals like posture and finger position, learning about how to read music. That's a very big one that a lot of parents are concerned about. They say, I learned when I was a kid, but I never learned how to read music. How is that possible? So we teach all of that all at once over a period of time. So as far as making that possible, the kids don't actually know that they're learning so much at the beginning. They just think they're playing songs, they're playing pieces. And a good teacher is able to kind of guide the kids through the whole experience without them realizing just how much they're learning. And then they look back after they've played a song, and particularly if they do decide to play in one of our recitals that take place every roughly 6 months, they say, oh, wow, I learned all this, and I couldn't have done this a few months ago. So that's the goal here. I want to talk about how this applies now to string players, to violin particularly, because that's my instrument. And, strings, what I'm going to say about strings can apply as well to guitar, to cello, to viola, because we have a slightly different approach here. String players have an advantage and a disadvantage when it comes to playing. The advantage of playing a string instrument, in my opinion, is that the instrument is closer to the voice, particularly a bowed stringed instrument like violin or cello. It mimics the human voice better, in my opinion, than a piano does, because a piano is more of a percussion instrument. We don't think of it as percussion, but when you push the key, you already have the sound is decaying. When we speak, we're connecting between words, what we're saying, with inflections. I can say, I'm so happy today. My voice has gone up. I'm so sad. The voice has gone down. On the piano, you can mimic that with your body, and of course, with the way you connect the notes with your fingers. But ultimately, once you've pressed that key, the sound is decaying. Now, the reason why I bring this all up is because with the strings, because of that advantage of being able to mimic the voice, you also have a disadvantage, which is that in order to make that nice sound that you do on the piano by pushing the key, you don't have that luxury of just putting the bow across the string and saying, gee, my sound sounds so nice. Unfortunately, the sound might be horrible the first time a kid will play a string instrument. So it's not going to stay that way all the time. And as parents, we have an obligation to be patient and encouraging. So what I'm getting at with this is that it takes a really skilled teacher to be able to kind of make a little bit of a dichotomy between technique and music, so that way they can teach children the technique that they need in order to make that good sound from as close to the beginning of the experience as possible. And most kids are not going to just sit there and play technique. They're not going to play technical exercises like scales and be excited about it. Some will. There are kids who are really into that kind of stuff, but the majority won't. So how do we deal with that in the first lesson? Well, what we do is we teach very basic technical exercises, but we kind of hide them as pieces. We couch them as pieces. So in other words, there are certain songs that might play just one string at a time, where you're not actually playing more than one or two notes, but you're learning rhythms, and the teacher's playing along with the student, and the student is unknowingly accompanying the teacher, thinking that he or she is playing a song. And it actually does work out, particularly because we can teach different rhythms as well to that one note that they're playing, and all at the same time they want to be able to play that note as beautifully as possible. They might want to sing along with it as well. Maybe even in the first lesson they'll start to learn how to play one finger on the string, which gives them another note to play as well. So this is one of many methods that can be used, but the basic idea is we want to keep that forward motion in terms of the kids feeling like they're learning something and that they can bring something home to mom to play. So another thing as well that's really important in this whole experience is the fact that kids really need to feel this sense that they are going toward a certain goal. So, one of the things that, and I'm going to bring up the Suzuki method now. Suzuki is a methodology that teaches the concept of developing auditory and musical memory. This is really important, and I don't believe enough teachers follow this today. We are not a Suzuki school, that's the disclaimer, but many, if not most, of our string teachers use the Suzuki Method books when they teach. And one of the most important characteristics of the Suzuki Method, which I think well, bad pun, but falls on deaf ears, is that the Suzuki methodology teaches about that you have to listen to music a lot. And the reason is because traditional Suzuki approach is that you teach music as if it were a mother tongue. In other words, there's a lot of listening and then imitating. Just like we were all babies once and we heard our moms talking or singing to us and we were imitating the inflections of her voice, or maybe we were imitating the we were looking at the mouth and trying to make the same kind of movements with our mouths. Well, it's the same thing in Suzuki methodology. So this is also what is taught at the first lesson. Whether or not a teacher is Suzuki certified or not, you can still teach a lot of these concepts in the same way. So that's what we do at the beginning. And then last but not least, I want to just cover very briefly what happens when a student becomes more advanced. As a student becomes more advanced, the concepts become more complex. So what happens is that a student who has been taught very well from the beginning has a lot of things to kind of fall back upon. As an example, at the beginning, although a kid might be too young or not ready yet to learn scales, we might be teaching parts of scales, or we might be teaching patterns of the fingers. And over time, we're able to build up a scale in place that a student can learn. And why is that necessary? Why do we teach scales? Scales are not just there to torture. They're actually there because in pieces that we're learning, there are scales that exist that build the piece, that you could actually make the very strong argument. I think this is actually a concept that a scale is a building block of a composer's piece. So for instance, every composer has a different language that he or she uses to compose in. However, depending on what period of time that composer was living in, there will be certain scales that this composer will have used, maybe many scales depending on the piece, that he or she is comfortable with. And music theorists go back in time and they say, gee, it looks like this composer was using this set of scales. We're going to call this scale a certain name. So, we'll call this the major scale or the minor scale. These are big topics for other times, which I won't bore you with right now. But anyway, so what we're getting at with this is that this dichotomy of technique and music, where a student is learning technical exercises in order to play music, is an artificial dichotomy, but it's very necessary, because what happens is that technique and music fuse together. We actually have what we have in music is an ultimate goal of creating a musical sentence or phrase that's going to move the listener in such a way that the person who's playing the music is so comfortable with the technique that has been taught from the teacher that the person listening sees everything in a very easy way, that is in the most efficient way possible on the instrument, played on the instrument, so that way something that is so complex as playing an instrument looks easy, and it just doesn't seem like there's any effort on the part of the musician. So that is our goal, and we start already to achieve this goal from the very first lesson, step by step, so that way ultimately over a number of years the music can become much more complex in a way that is step by step. I hope you enjoyed our video today. This is the Maestro Musicians Academy. I'm Daniel Broniatowski from Boston, Massachusetts. And we serve not just Boston, but the World Wide Web now through our virtual lessons online. And here in Boston, we're located in Lexington, Bedford, and Walpole. You can find out more about us at maestromusicianslexington.com, or on our Facebook page, Maestro Musicians Lexington, or our YouTube channel, Maestro Musicians. Have a wonderful holiday season, everyone. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, a belated Happy Hanukkah, and a Happy New Year. And until next time.